On a Thursday morning, on the 12th of July 2018, Nigeria's former president, Muhammadu Buhari, took a ride from the Central Business District of Abuja to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. It was a train ride marking the first official trip of the Abuja Metro, which he had just commissioned. On a Wednesday morning, on the 1st of August 2018, I took a ride from the Central Business District of Abuja to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport on the commissioned and then operational Abuja Metro line. If these sentences sound familiar to you, then you may have read this article, Why the Abuja Metro is a Mass Transportation Failure, which was written after that ride. It explains, as the name implies, why the metro was a failure even at that early operational stage. At the time, the article received some harsh feedback from more patriotic-presenting Nigerians who pointed out its pessimism. But there was nothing really pessimistic about it. It was so clear to see that the Abuja Light Rail did not offer what mass transportation systems should to urban residents. Well, the system operated for only about 2 years and has been shut down since the pandemic lockdowns in 2021, coincidentally giving officials a convenient excuse as to why. But years later, despite costing over 800 million US dollars with about 60% funding from Chinese loans, the metro has remained inoperative. In this video, we'll be exploring the real reasons why the Abuja Metro failed from planning and technical viewpoints even before it began to operate. Spoiler alert, it has very little to do with the pandemic. We'll also be talking to Tonami Playman, a data analyst who boldly calls the Abuja Metro the worst mass transit project on the planet. But before going any further, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you haven't, share this video, and leave any feedback in the comments. That said, welcome to Nigerian Urbanism. The most obvious place to start is why Abuja Metro can be considered to be the worst mass transit project in the world. According to Tonami, and this will re-emphasize that he is a data analyst, it's about the numbers.
The biggest factor of measurement for a performance of the metro system is how much ridership that metro system gets. And Abuja Metro, combined with all the multitude of issues that are associated with both planning and execution of the line. When the line was in operation, the highest amount of riders that was achieved was 400 riders a day. And for spending $850 million on an infrastructure project, and you're only able to serve 400 riders daily, that's not a good use of infrastructure spending. So, and there's no metro system in the world that I know of that has such abysmal numbers.
Some of the busiest metro systems in the world have daily ridership of 4 to 10 million people. But these systems have multiple lines, while the Abuja Metro was a single line system when it operated. So, taking that into consideration, the busiest metro systems in the world have daily ridership per line of about 200,000 to 800,000. Now, this is not a comparison. It's simply establishing the global context. For a fairer comparison, let's narrow the scope to the African context, despite not having a lot of operating urban rail systems to compare with. Still, 400 riders per day is abysmal. It begs the question, why did so few people ride the Abuja Metro?
The biggest issue with it is the routing of the line. The alignment goes through an area that is that has no demand. It basically runs through the middle of nowhere, and while ignoring sections of the city that has traffic demand for riders.
To grasp how poorly routed the Abuja Metro is, especially in relation to the existing urban population, necessary to understand the urban structure of Abuja, which was explained to some detail in this video. Here's a quick recap. The Federal Capital City was originally planned for 4 phases. Currently, Phase 1 and 2 have the highest levels of infrastructure and formal housing population densities, while Phase 3 have pockets of population densities. Beyond these phases, settlements like Lugbe, Kubwa, and the cluster of Nyanya, Karo, and Jukwe also have high urban agglomerations and are a significant source of daily traffic into and out of the city at peak hours. With all these urban agglomerations, how did the Abuja Metro run through the middle of nowhere? Well, the entire metro system itself does not. Remember how we mentioned that some systems from other parts of the world had a number of lines and the Abuja Metro had 1? See, that's 1 out of 6. Other lines connect the city quite well, and I've also made reference to them a number of times in this video when I mentioned the many transit ways in Abuja that are yet to be developed. Among them, 1 line runs through popular and well-populated districts like Gwarimpa, Jabi, Utako, Wuse, and Garki. Another runs through districts like Katampe, Maitama, the Central Business District, Asokoro, and into the Karo and Nyanya urban cluster. If the concept of transit-oriented development, which is a sustainable urban planning method that promotes the relationship between dense urban forms and public transport use by developing transit lines through density or promoting density along transit lines, is anything to go by, one of these lines should have had the first priority. Instead, priority was given to this line, which connects the Abuja Metro Central Station to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport through Idu, which is an industrial, not a residential district. That would have been a good idea if the metro was built for free, not commuter trains. It was a bad idea, but it got the green light. Besides the line itself, Tsunami points out some issues with stations of the Abuja Metro in a Twitter thread titled "How Not to Build Rapid Transit Stations." One issue is the pedestrian connection to the stations themselves, which, like the lines, are isolated from urban areas, implying that people will have to travel long distances to access the stations, even if they were functioning.
The other issue is how the line was implemented. So the design of the stations are inaccessible. Even the stations that are not in the middle of nowhere, the stations that were close to where people could use, the access to the station is limited and direct from the main station in Abuja down to the airport, and they were not running any trains to any of the other in-between stations. The line had about 10 stations in total, and out of all those 10 stations, only 2 stations were operational since the line has been open. So, of course, those you're going to get poor ridership because airports in general are not strong demand centers, contrary to what a lot of elites like to think.
According to some, this approach implies that the stations will be there in advance of urban sprawl, but this is yet another misplacement of funds in addition to the size of the stations.
Yes, the station size is an issue. It's a poor decision choice in building oversized stations for essentially what is commuter traffic, where you just need the basic necessities. And I see the same thing happening in Lagos as well on the Red Line with large oversized station buildings where all that is needed is just the station platforms to serve the riders. I hope that future lines that they take that into consideration, and that will allow them to be able to build more lines if they can save some cost on the stations that they're building. choosing to route the line to where there's no development and waiting for the development to catch up. I don't see that as something that we should strive for, because these lines are built with loans, and those loans have to be serviced once they're due. So normally they do have like a grace period, like Abuja had, the Abuja Metro line had about 5-year grace period, but I think that grace period ended in 2019, and they had to start making payments to service the loan from 2019. And if you're not getting the ridership that was planned for the line, then you're paying for infrastructure that is not being used. So you want to target the areas where you're sure that you get service, the places that need the lines first. And then when you're building future extensions, then you can route it to areas where you want to guide development.
We know that at the moment it consists of one previously operational line and two previously operational stations, being the airport station and the central area station. The third station, which is located at Idu, is more of a national line. With that in mind, how can the Abuja Metro get back on track to start running again and take advantage of some of the changes in the city since it stopped running about 3 years ago?
I think the most important thing is to get the line running and get as much trains running on the line, and also get the other stations active. Another thing would be to get bus connections, bus services to serve those stations. Even if today there's not that much development around the stations, if they can get bus services serving those stations, then those stations will start getting some use immediately. So those are just basic to get the most out of what's already been built. But you have to still spend more money to build the other important lines, the lines that are going through where the population is. And once those lines are built, it will increase the utility of this line that's currently of very little use to the city at the moment. And then also the long-term plans is to encourage high density development along the stations on that particular line.
While the Abuja Metro is the first operational intra-city urban rail service in Nigeria, the second is the Lagos Rail Mass Transit, which has begun test operations on one of its lines, the Blue Line. Could it suffer the same fate?
For the Lagos Blue Line, they do have a lot of things going in their favor. The biggest one is the line goes through a high traffic demand corridor, so it's definitely going to get use. Now, the question is, what kind of service is Lamata, the train operator, what type of service are they going to provide to meet that traffic demand? I mean, Lagos is also making similar planning mistakes to Abuja in terms of planning for service. So when the Abuja Metro was planned, they didn't plan for purchasing the right number of trains. Same thing in Lagos. They only have, I think right now they have about 3 trains in their fleet, and they're planning on starting the service with those 3 trains. That signifies that once the line is in operation, it's going to have severe overcrowding because the service is not able to meet the capacity of that particular line. Another thing is with trains, you can't just go off and buy trains at a dealership and just put it on the line. You have to make long-term orders because there's a lead time. The average lead time for getting between when you place an order for a rolling stock and when you receive it is between 3 to 4 years. So I haven't seen any public reports of orders made for trains on the Blue Line. And if they made an order today in 2023, the earliest that they meant to receive those trains will be 2026. So you're looking at 3 years of operation with um, insufficient rolling stock to meet the demand, and that's a problem that it's a it's a Nigeria-wide problem, and I see Lagos making not being proactive in terms of getting the right amount of trains to run their service. In terms of like other things that they could learn from Abuja, I think it's not seeing the train service as an isolated piece of infrastructure. And I think to some extent, Lagos might be a little bit better because even though the BRT service is not being fully utilized in Lagos, at least there are attempts providing some service or some form of integration going on. And I think that's where they need to also focus on. In Abuja doesn't really care about public transit, so that's a whole other story.
Metro systems are key public transport solutions to urban mobility. And it's quite sad that Abuja, the capital city of the most populous country in Africa, cannot get it right. But there are other African cities Abuja can learn from, particularly in Northern Africa. Forget about the pandemic. The Abuja Metro failed because it was poorly executed in terms of selection of the priority line, location and access to stations, and functionality of the stations. All of these led to very low ridership because the line primarily connected the city directly to the airport with only one transfer point at the Idu station. To get it running again, more money must be spent to get more trains and increase frequency to get the built stations operational. The second transit-oriented development option should be pursued to promote high-density development along the line. One way to go about that is to target the provision of basic infrastructure to districts along the line and offer incentives that will invite housing developers to those areas. Other public transport options must also be introduced to supplement the metro before other lines, especially those running through already dense districts, are built. Until then, over $800 million continues to rot away, providing no value to the city of Abuja. It could well be the worst mass transit project on the planet. Massive thanks to Tonami Playman for his contributions in this episode. Follow him on Twitter at Tonami Playman for very insightful threads on urban infrastructure from cities all around the world. Have you subscribed to Nigerian Urbanism? Please do, and give this video a thumbs up if you like it. See you next time.